Good afternoon and welcome. I'm John McCormick. I'm the Monitoring Officer for the Joint Committee, and I'm starting the meeting because I have to deal with an administrative matter. I would like to move item 9 and ask for nominations for the Chair of the Joint Committee. Do I have a nomination?
I'm happy to nominate Mayor Tim Bowles.
Do I have a seconder? Any members wish to speak to this item? Okay, I'll move to the vote. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Congratulations, Mayor Bowles, if you'd like to take your seat.
John, thank you very much for opening the meeting and that first element. And thank you, members, for nominating and proposing and putting me in the chair. So thank you all very much indeed. My first role, therefore, is to conclude item number 9, which we have brought forward, and that is the election of the Vice Chair for the Joint Committee. So may I call for a proposer, please, for the Vice Chair?
I'd like to propose Councillor Toby Savage, and can I take this opportunity to welcome him to the Joint Committee?
Thank you. And may I call for a seconder? Marvin, thank you very much. There being no other proposals, please could we indicate, unless any members would like to speak any further on the matter, can we move to the vote then, please? Those in favour of Toby becoming Vice Chair? And note we all have indicated as much. Toby, thank you very much. Oh, we won't smile for the record, but nonetheless, Toby, thank you very much. Just on the matter that Tim's just raised, again, I'd like to pay our thanks and best wishes to Matthew Riddle, who again had been chair of the Joint Committee since its inception, for all the work again he's done both at this level and through every other aspect of the joint working. May I also express my personal thanks and our collective thanks for Marvin for having been vice chair of this committee last year as well. So thank you very much. And again, Marvin, as I said a little earlier, thank you again for hosting us and for all the work that your colleagues have put into bringing today's meeting together. And I'd like to just formally welcome Councillor Tim Warren, leader of Bath and North East Somerset, Marvin Rees again from Bristol City Council, Councillor Toby Savage, leader of South Gloucestershire Council, and Professor Steve West, the chairman of the Local Enterprise Partnership. As we've said, our formal thanks will be recorded to Matthew for all his hard work in the past. Just before we move on to the formal aspects of the agenda, again, in terms of housekeeping, I know some of you have been with us a little earlier, but in the event everybody's joined us for the first time, there are no fire drills planned for today, so in the event of a fire, please take direction from our council staff colleagues who will assist with the evacuation, and may I remind everybody, please do not return to the building in the event of an emergency unless instructed to do so by the fire wardens. And again, may I remind everybody that the meeting is being recorded and will subsequently be available on our website following the meeting. So should anybody who has a concern about being filmed, please make our friends aware of that either now or at any point during the business as we conduct. I don't see anybody indicating any concerns, but again, please feel free to do so. The next item are apologies. Sadly, Councillor Nigel Ashton hasn't been able to join us at very short notice, so we do appreciate all the work he does, and we'll record his apologies for the minutes. So we will then move on to declarations of interest under the Localism Act of 2011. And again, members, do you have any declarations to make under the Localism Act of 2011? I note for the record that there are none. In terms of our minutes, the draft minutes from the meeting we held on the 18th of April have been circulated along with the papers for confirmation and sign-off as a correct record of the meeting. Members, do you have any comments on the accuracy of the minutes? In that case, may I take it that we are all happy that I sign them for the record? Thank you. Thank you, John. And we'll move on then just to some quick announcements, if I may. Our agenda for this meeting includes a number of items. We'll be asked to approve the Combined Authority Business Plan for 18-19. Whilst this was covered in the earlier Combined Authority meeting, this is also brought here as it includes delivery of the Local Enterprise Partnership activity. We'll be receiving an update on progress of the Joint Transport Plan. We'll be receiving an update on Metrobus, along with a request to allocate £6 million of skills funding, capital funding, and proposals to strengthen the One Front Door programme governance. And again, this item was discussed at the Combined Authority Committee meeting, but is also brought to this committee, who oversee the One Front Door programme. So I would now like to invite Professor Steve West, the Chair of our Local Enterprise Partnership, to address the meeting. Steve, is there anything you'd like to say?
Thank you, Chair. A few things that I just want to share. The first is that I attended a meeting earlier this week with the network of LEP chairs, and at that meeting we were discussing with civil servants a review that is being undertaken looking at LEPs and the future role of LEPs and the relationship that LEPs will have where there are combined authorities. We are hopeful that by the summer we'll have clarity from the government in respect to the governance arrangements for LEPs, the accountabilities and responsibilities that flow as a result. We, of course, as a LEP, are sharing current structure and governance and hoping that they will see that actually we've done quite a lot of thinking on this and may use it as a template to be rolled out across the rest of England, and we'll wait to see whether or not that is the case. We also discussed at that meeting the forthcoming discussion and meeting with the Prime Minister at number 10 later this month. She will be holding a set of discussions with LEP chairs to try to understand how LEPs and I suspect combined authorities will be working to try to translate the industrial strategy into local industrial strategies and how we'll then drive the economy forward. We will be stressing at that meeting in respect of ensuring that we look for sustainable and inclusive economic growth across our city region that engages with all cities, and that will be something that we want to see as we develop our industrial strategy. We also met earlier this week with Board Public Relations. That was around, first of all, an understanding of the way in which we as a city region are helping people back into work. They were interested in what they could do to help. And I stressed, first of all, that it would be really good if DWP could put pressure on other government departments to join things up, perhaps in a way that we're not spotting at the moment, and in particular how DFE and Department of Work and Pensions and the Home Office could be working together to actually resolve some tricky issues. One of those being our difficulties in terms of getting a health workforce fit for future. The current position is that visas are restricting the entry of qualified doctors and healthcare workers. We, in this particular region, have particular difficulties on staffing within our NHS, and it does seem quite bizarre that we are stopping able and highly qualified people coming into this country who want to work in our NHS and preventing them from doing so. We stressed that this is likely to cause even more difficulty within the NHS and our ability to deliver care in a timely way, and that we would hope that she would be able to put pressure back into other government departments just to try to ease that situation. Otherwise, we will not be able to deliver the care that is required, and of course that has knock-on consequences in terms of them being able to get people into work. We also discussed skills agenda and how we can use perhaps more creatively the apprenticeship levy. The apprenticeship levy many organisations are paying at the moment is quite difficult to get out from Treasury, and we're arguing that that should be, a proportion of that should be allocated back to regions, back to city regions, to be able to determine how best to use it in partnership with employers, and that should be more flexible than currently described, in that we should be able to use it to enhance and reskill existing workforce as well as bringing in new workforce. So we hope that she'll have some impact in terms of encouraging other government departments to move in the right direction. It's also pleasing to note that we saw the first run of the Metro bus. I sat on it and it was a fantastic journey, and that's a great start, I think, for the future in terms of beginning to think strategically about our transport infrastructure and network. And whilst there will be lessons to have been learned, I'm sure, it is the starting place, I think, for us doing something quite strategic across our city region. And having lived here for 20 years, it's great to see some joined up thinking at last in that respect. I also note that we have been shortlisted for Channel 4's new headquarters and hub. That's a fantastic example, again, of joined up working across the city region. Invest in Bristol and Bath played a fantastic role in helping us achieve that, along with Marvin and Lynn Barlow from the University of West of England, and many, many others who've worked together with our creative industry sector to try to attract Channel 4. And we are on a shortlist. We are in very good company. We recognise that it is a competition, and we're going to have to work hard to continue to encourage Channel 4 to make the right decision and come to Bristol. And I'm sure all of you in the room will help us on that particular journey. We believe we have something unique to offer, and we hope Channel 4 recognises it. I do have some concerns, Chair, to just share, and that relates to the toll coming off of the bridges. We are concerned within the business community in particular that that is going to have quite a significant impact on the North Fringe of Bristol and Filton, and at the moment we don't appear to have a plan in terms of how to mitigate increase in traffic, and we are concerned that that does need to be looked at, because we already suffer gridlock at numerous times of the day there at the moment. And we understand from government data and Highways Agency that they'd already identified that this was likely to be a problem, and yet they still go ahead and remove the tolls at the end of the year. So we do wish some further work to be done there. And the final area that I think we are doing some strategic work around is the post-16 skills agenda, and looking strategically across our patch in terms of what is our offer to adults and post-16 children in terms of education that is aligned to business needs and future employment. We believe there's some work to be done there that joins up and shares information across, in particular, Unitary Authority boundaries. Thank you, Chair.
Steve, thank you again for sharing your report with us and comments with us. Again, through this committee, please can you extend our thanks to all of the members of the LEP, and especially to yourself for the hard work you do. And again, I think it's really important that we again use this opportunity to echo your thoughts and everybody else's around our work in supporting Marvin and the bid to make sure that we see Channel 4 at home, a really positive new home from in Bristol, and everybody on the Joint Committee is firmly behind all of that, and we're all looking forward to working together towards that. So really good and exciting times ahead of us. So Steve, thank you again. We then move on to item 7, which is items from the public. We have received 2 written questions which have been submitted, and written answers have been provided to those questions. We have also received 3 statements, and the attendees will be invited to speak for up to 3 minutes in the order their statements were received. So in that case, please, may I invite David Redgewell to address the committee for up to 3 minutes. Dave.
David Redgewell from Buses UK. I mean, of course, I'd always say that the thing we lack here is a bus strategy. All the other combined authorities have now begun to get their bus strategies written, published, and begin to end up with the DFT. And we do need to get that strategy in play, commissioned and actually out there for public consultation, including North Somerset. So I think that would be my top priority, and that would also hopefully gap fill the issues around Metro Bus in South Bristol, where we need to find answers to the routes that haven't been commissioned at the moment, the Wick Church, the route from Hengrove through Bedminster and past through the city centre, and the missing route via the South Bristol link that were always envisaged at public inquiry. And I sat through those public inquiries. To be absolutely clear, Mr Mayor, those public inquiries, they were always envisaged those bus services were going to run. There was always commitments to DFT inspectors, and there was always commitments to serve Bristol Parkway. And I know Richard is working very hard to get Bristol Parkway up and running with Network Rail, I think by November. So I'm convinced that's going to happen, but I would like some assurances about the South Bristol situation, and the passengers we represent in South Bristol are beginning to ask a lot of questions about when they're going to see the metro buses that they were promised as part of the deal, and the 2 public inquiries and the DFT, £200 million of taxpayers' money. But I welcome what we've got so far with the M3. I came on the T1 this morning. Richard, it's brilliant. I said, James, it's brilliant. I fought very hard to get a T1, by the way, guys, is Bradley Stoke, Thornbury City Centre, along the Metro bus route. It's the most quiet one that hasn't been talked about. That's up and running now. You can all travel on it every 30 minutes. We just need to shout a bit more about it and tell everybody it's running. But along with the M3, those 2 are successful. And I'm sure if we get the South Bristol offer right, people will be on those buses. But we need to get the network there. On Temple Meads, lots of work going on with the Mayor's Congestion Task Group, as Alex Perry is doing a lot of work there with First Great Western. But I am still concerned, I've said, Marvin, I keep this point, about James sat down with us, with Great Western Railway.
1 minute.
Okay, and we need to sort out the interchange of the buses towards the city centre. Outbound, we're all perfectly happy. Inbound, we still need to sort this issue out. Metro West, I'm more relaxed than most. I think that's going to happen. There's more stuff going on the DFT. I've met with Chris Graylings now 3 times personally. I think put his head's on the agenda. I think he said he wants to make that happen, and the line, and I'm convinced that's going to happen as well. But there's more work to do with Network Rail around engineering. On rail, I remind you, we got to take part in the cross-country consultation. So Bristol will need to take part in the consultation process and make sure we fulfil our terms, what we want between the South West, Manchester, the North and Scotland, and there'll be consultation starting this month. And then on integrated ticketing, I really would like to see more. I get the Metro bus leaflets. This is great, but the one thing that's not in it is much about what tickets are valid on those Metro buses other than the ones you can get, the smart cards. Thank you very much.
Dave, thank you very much. And again, always appreciate your comments and support. And again, comments noted and statements will be included in the minutes. And Christina, may we ask you to address us?
Thank you.
for 3
Christina
minutes again.
Biggs.
Hello.
Christina Biggs, Friends of Suburban Bristol Railways. We welcome Steve West's comments on the 7-metre toll. I just want to point out that there is a rail network around there, and there's Pilning, which is just outside the M5, and we think that that's going to be very close to the M49 junction when it comes in. So obviously we don't want the 7-bridge tolls to mean too much traffic into Bristol, but there is a solution, which is to park people at Pilning and take the train, which is 19 minutes. And I dare any bus to get from Pilning to the centre of Bristol in 19 minutes. So please don't give up on rail. It's very exciting to be putting Metro bus in. We're very supportive of bus in general, so long as it links in with the rail network. There are 3 bus routes, Metro bus, that's just 3 across Bristol. They don't go from Bristol to other cities. The rail network does. There's an existing rail network, and it obviously needs investment. I would say that the investment isn't a huge amount compared to Highways England investment. So we have our Frosborough Rail Plan, and there's proposals in there to increase capacity. Filton Bank's carrying on now, but there's Bristol Junction to do. There's the Thornbury line to put in. So don't forget rail, and especially Portishead. I mean, this is everyone's problem. It's not just North Somerset's problem. It's dumping cars on Bristol. It's increasing congestion. It's contributing to poor air quality in Bristol. So I would really push that you should be looking for funding and delivering this, because it's a standing joke. If it doesn't get through, it's going to be a standing joke. People are going to just not believe in rail anymore. Obviously, we believe in rail, but for reason that it's a network
Christine, you have
that
1 minute
is
left.
completely independent of road congestion. It's a parallel network. Think the body. It's a nerve system, if you like. It travels faster. The blood system obviously is more comprehensive, like the bloods, your capillaries or whatever. But it's please, believe in rail. Please invest in it, and please just make sure it's to our Fosbury Rail Plan. Thank you very much.
Christina, thank you again. Appreciate your comments. And again, they've been noted, and your statements, of course, will be included in the minutes. And our third speaker today is Thomas Grabbett. Thomas.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm here to talk about the Portishead Railway, which has been touched on by the other two speakers. So, Portishead Back on Track is a grassroots campaign that has been set up since the rejection of the bid for funding to the Department of Transport for Metro West. We've collected over 1,000 signatures in support of fully funding the Portishead Railway. And really, I'm just here to say that there's a strong desire in Portishead for the railway to be built. There has been for a very long time, but people are getting fed up of promises and nothing being delivered. Most people I speak to in Portishead seem to think the railway is never going to happen because of everything being promised and then not coming through in the end. According to the Treasury, South West received the second least funding per person for transport investment in 2016, at £219 per head. In London, the funding was £1,869 per head. Given this disparity, it's especially important that we get big infrastructure projects into the area. Metro West Phase 1 plans for a rail link from Bristol to Pill and Portishead are an excellent example of the kind of project the government should be encouraging. It will help to ease congestion between Bristol and North Somerset while also cutting pollution and providing economic benefits. We'll be submitting questions asking what plans this authority has to make sure that Metro West Phase 1 gets the funding it needs, but in the meantime I urge all members here to treat the Portishead Railway as a priority to achieve all the potential benefits from the project and to restore trust from the people of North Somerset who feel let down by inaction when it comes to the railway. Thanks.
Thomas, thank you very much. Again, appreciate your comments and your statement, as we say, will be, like the others, included in the minutes. So thank you very much. That concludes items from the public. Petitions. Members of the committee, do we have any petitions to present today? I note for the record that we haven't, so thank you very much indeed for that. Item number 9 we have covered at the start of the meeting, and in that case, please, we will move on to item number 10. And this item was discussed at the earlier West of England Combined Authority meeting and is now brought to this committee as the business plan includes items to support the local enterprise partnership. At our meeting in April, we did request a final version of this plan to be reported back for approval, and this is included for our considerations. And as we mentioned earlier on, an inequalities impact assessment and risk assessment have now been completed, and the business plan has been used to inform the forward plan of key decisions for this meeting, for this committee, and that is appended to the report along with a calendar of meetings. And as we discussed earlier, a cumulative impact assessment will also take place in parallel to this. So the committee is asked to approve the business plan and to note the forward plan of key decisions and calendars of meetings. I'm very happy to move the recommendations. May I look for a seconder, please? Tim, thank you very much. Members, is there anything in particular you'd like to add to anything from earlier? I appreciate we've all discussed it, unless anything has cropped up in the meantime. Thank you. We'll move to the vote. Recommendation 1 requires a majority decision of the 4 local authorities and the combined authority mayor. So may I ask those here eligible to indicate those in favour? I note for the record that everybody is, so we'll declare that result as carried. And recommendations 2 and 3 are for the committee to note. So again, for the record, we will record that they are duly noted. Thank you very much. Item 11 is the transport update. Members, our next paper provides an update on the progress to produce the new joint local transport plan. Those papers have been circulated. We've discussed them at various levels, through directors, through various members and chief execs. Members, were there any other comments we'd like to bring forward today on those papers? No, thank you. I note that, that this item is for noting, and we're asked to just note that the revised timescale for producing the joint local transport plan, and that will be formally recorded in the minutes. So thank you very much indeed for that. That takes us to item 12, a Metro Bus update. Our next item is an update on Metro Bus. I'm delighted that Peter and the team we've invited them along today. To remind everybody, this project is a project that's been led by the three authorities, namely Bristol City Council, South Gloucestershire and North Somerset. And as I say, I'm delighted that Peter, who's Head of Transport at Bristol City Council, has come along to give us an update, particularly in relation to those three authorities who are responsible. Peter. I'm conscious the screen is behind me, so I'm going to move round the corner if I may.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to give you an update on Metro Bus. Sorry that we've had to turn around and look at the presentation. Hopefully that noise will go away and you might be able to mute it. Okay, thank you. I'm just going to start with this.
After many years in the making, this week Metro Bus became a reality. The new service is set to revolutionise public transport in Bristol, getting the city moving and supporting economic growth. Metro Bus offers substantially faster journey times, creating a better connected city.
Metro Bus is a positive step forward. Metro Bus will effectively shrink the city a little bit.
The benefits of Metro Bus are huge. Predominantly for the science block is about the connectivity.
We wanted to see good provision, linking areas like South Bristol with big employment areas in the central of the city, in north of the city.
And connecting to some of the bits of the city centre that are buzzing, which is sort of atmosphere is really important. The transport is key for us. That was just a short piece of video which was done earlier this week. Grateful for those who contributed to that and to the comments about the new Metro Bus service. Just to emphasise what the Mayor has just said about the joint effort, this is a huge joint effort with Bristol City Council, North Somerset, South Gloucestershire involved, as well as now First West of England. And I'm pleased to be able to say that representatives of the three authorities and First, James Freeman, as the Managing Director, are here this morning to help me present this on behalf of them and indeed the wider team who've been involved in Metro Bus. So we have Metro Buses on our streets. The M3 service launched on Tuesday from Emerson Green to the city centre. It has a distinctive branding because Metro Bus is a distinctive service. First, the operator is promoting M3 as a free service for the first 2 weeks, and we've been publicising the new service across various media. But where has it come from? It's important to recognise the strategic context of Metro Bus, the fact that we've had 2 joint local transport plans over the last 10 years or so, 15 years, all of which have had major programmes of investment in transport across the sub-region. And Metro Bus is very much part of that. And there's some examples there of the sort of investment that we've collectively put in and the government put in to transport in the sub-region. And Metro Bus seeks to connect people with jobs and to help grow the economy of the sub-region. And again, here's the numbers that we put forward originally in the proposals to the government to fund this for Metro Bus, which directly link Metro Bus routes, Metro Bus investment in infrastructure to jobs growth and housing growth. The investment is huge, 230 million plus. But the sources of that investment are spread around. So government have contributed 114 million or thereabouts, with the three constituent authorities contributing their part. And indeed we've had, as part of the local authority contributions from third parties such as Bristol Airport. But delivering a programme of this scale has not come without its challenges, without enormous challenges, which have come in many different forms: scope and funding, governance and procedure, physical build and security, technology and operations. All of those things have challenged us and challenged the teams, hundreds of people involved in delivering Metrobus over the last 8 years roughly, since the scheme's really got going through the proceeding process. And on the way we have learned lessons, but what we've done is a massive investment in the infrastructure for the sub-region. We've built 3.5 kilometres of busway, 8 road bridges, 3 railway bridges. You can see the numbers there. Huge investment in the infrastructure, permanent infrastructure for the city region. A good example is outside in central Bristol, where we've changed around the traffic and simplified the traffic arrangements, which has made significant improvements, not just to bus services and bus reliability, but for general traffic, for all traffic travelling through that. We've segregated taxis off for taxi rank purposes, and we've separated pedestrians and cyclists and given them much better public realm. No more so than changing that, which was in existence a year or two ago, to what it is today, which is outside the Cenotaph, a significant new area of public realm for everyone to benefit. Just rattling through these slides of the things that we've put in place through the Metrobus investment: bridges large and small, the restoration of the listed Ashton Avenue swing bridge, which cost £3.2 million. We've never got the money directly from government to do that unless we did it through Metrobus, which is a very significant additional benefit to the city region. The M32 Carsona junction, this was a junction that required the closure of a motorway over the whole weekend in June 2016, I think it was, which is, I believe, the first ever full closure of a motorway over a full weekend for a construction project. We put in a new bridge, removing a bottleneck at Bathurst Basin, adding to the infrastructure, to the network, to the highway network, which has also included some flood protection. I'll talk about that again in a moment. We built a busway that's dedicated for Metrobus vehicles and complementary services from Long Ashton Park and Ride in towards the city centre, which cuts out large chunks of Cumberland Basin and the congestion that buses have experienced there. But we've also put in parallel walking and cycling routes to benefit those who want to use those modes. The South Bristol Link is connecting businesses in South Bristol with the wider road network, with Bristol Airport more directly. It also is including walking and cycling routes alongside. The Stoke-Gifford Transport Link up in South Gloucestershire has improved journey times already around that area and reduced congestion around Abbey Wood. And it will directly serve additional homes and housing that's been provided over the next 20 years as part of the Joint Station Plan commitment. Again, in South Gloucestershire, Bradley Stoke and Aztec West and New Ewell benefited from the additional infrastructure that Metrobus has brought. And I said before, walking and cycling improvements, we've put more than 10 kilometres of new cycle routes in, which help an awful lot of people and promote the continued growth of cycling as a commuter mode into the city, which is already higher than anywhere else, any other similar core city across the country. Additional benefits: we've built new flood protection, protecting hundreds of homes, which again would otherwise not have been possible unless we've got the Metrobus money directly from government. We've removed unsuitable traffic from certain roads, and South Bristol particularly has benefited from that. Partridge Way has seen traffic reductions because the South Bristol Link has been put in, so it's deflecting traffic that would otherwise just be travelling through those communities. Some of the branding that we've introduced does capture some of that. Brought to you by Metrobus is a campaign that we're promoting alongside the the services themselves, but just point out the additionality of what Metrobus has delivered over the last few years. And something that's perhaps not so visible within the whole Metrobus programme is how the contractors that we've used have worked within their community, building relationships with schools and colleges, using apprentices, going into those places and explaining their industry and the opportunities that might bring to young people to potentially move into that field of work. Alan Griffiths, one of the contractors on Metrobus, has set up its own regional base in South Bristol. So the vehicles themselves, distinctive, you've probably seen them by now. They're branded by route, so the green route is up and running. This is a picture of the forthcoming orange coloured route. The buses themselves are environmentally friendly. They have twin doors to speed up boarding time. They're spacious, they have Wi-Fi and all the other technology that you would expect a modern vehicle to have. Buy before you board. Off-bus ticketing is one of the key principles of Metrobus. That is to help speed up boarding times, to simplify it, because fumbling around with coins and change is such a delay, such a drag on journey time reliability. So that was one of the key principles that we established very early on in the ticketing arrangements for Metrobus. We've got simple zonal fares that James Freeman may want to comment a bit more about, but they're simple prices, £1.50 for within the central zone, £2.50 if you're crossing into it or out of it from the other one. So simple fares, the availability of day rider tickets, concessionary passes are all accepted as the normal background bus service. But the iPoints themselves, the information points, do provide the ability to top up your smart card. They provide real-time information and journey planning capabilities, and they help with the branding of Metrobus overall. We've enlisted a group of enthusiastic young people to help communicate how to use iPoints, how to manage the off-bus ticketing, because it's really important. It's a massive cultural step for this city region to go to cashless ticketing. And so we've got a bunch of very enthusiastic young people who are out on our streets at the moment, helping people to understand a bit more about it. And we have got services running. Services are now already connecting communities across the city region. And we expect to see the benefits in the not-too-distant future in terms of the economic growth that that will bring. We've had really good publicity, really good social media comments. Some of them you may well have heard. And at the moment we have two other routes that are coming forward. So we've launched the M3 from Emerson Street to the city centre, the M2 from Long Ashton Park and Ryde into the city will start in the autumn. And the M1 service, the big north-south service from Hengrove South, Bristol, right through to Prince Causeway will start in January 2019. So just a summary, what does Metrobus offer? Well, it's fast, frequent, reliable, it serves those key destinations that we need to be served by better public transport. It's high quality, it's a step above anything else that we've seen before. It's got capacity to grow, it's got commercial operations, we can't be subsidising services forever and a day. The investment of £230 million in capital funding is a huge investment. We need to be working with the industry to deliver services that are sustainable commercially on a long-term basis. And we have got that distinctiveness around the vehicle type and the offer itself. We are looking to measure how successful Metrobus is, and we've got a number of different things, and a lot more detail behind this slide in terms of how we expect to see change as a result of Metrobus coming forward over the next few months. James is sitting there, so I won't read out his quote. He can read it if he wants, or tell us in his own words, or these are his words, tell us in his own words. Steve is sitting here, and similarly made a quote to us through the launch of the Metrobus M3 service a couple of weeks ago. And Anna Driscoll is the director of North Bristol Suscom. She also has come out very strongly supporting Metrobus services. That's a summary of where we are. I hope it's helpful. The team are here. Richard Gillingham, Colin Meagers, James Freeman, Pete Woodhouse, and myself, very happy to take questions, but hopefully that's a good update for you this morning.
Peter, thank you very much indeed. A fascinating presentation there. I think it really highlights the incredible amount of work, the scope of work, and I'm sure it really highlights to a lot of people there's so much more work that's gone on behind this project over this length of time that I'm sure many people really appreciate. So thank you very much for coming along to James and some of the other team so that the committee can both share with you what you just presented, but also gives us the opportunity just to raise any points or ask any questions. So if you're happy on that, we'll just run round the committee just to see if there's any points anyone would like to raise. Shall we start with Toby, perhaps, so we go through this?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Peter, for that presentation. I was born and brought up in South Gloucestershire, and this is, in my lifetime, the biggest single investment that we have seen in transport, and that is to be enormously welcomed. And we're seeing, particularly, along some of the routes through South Gloucestershire, how the Stoke Gifford Transport Link, amongst others, has completely transformed that community and has actually improved residents' lives for the better. What I'm really keen to see is that invariably, because it was such a large investment, that all the learning that we've taken from the challenges that we've had to overcome, inevitably with a scheme of that size, that we are able to apply that learning as we seek to deliver the other very ambitious transport schemes that we have got coming down the line, because we have created the West of England Combined Authority.
Thank you. Peter, was there any thoughts or comments on
yes, I mean, I might ask Richard to comment actually on learning, because we have carried out already some lessons learnt sessions through the project as we've been going forward. So we've already captured a lot of that and indeed applied it to the latter stages of the project. But certainly the principle of applying learning to the future programme, which we expect to be very large over the next 20 years, is a key one that we are carrying forward. But perhaps Richard's got a few particular comments.
It's not working. So yeah, the project's been a very complex project, and we've had to obviously deal with a lot. It's been over 3 local authorities, also involved Network Rail, Highways England. So actually, the amount of resource, the amount of effort involved in actually bringing that all together, working with those different agencies, is very much a lesson that we've actually learned and can transfer onto future projects about, the timelines involved, just the amount of effort involved in bringing that all together, which we've managed to do on this project, but there's various lessons that we can learn and transfer that knowledge. Also, just an example of some of the stuff that we've already transferred across to other projects. On the communications front, especially North Fringe to Hengrove project and Metrobus as a whole, when we were actually doing the construction work, although we put a lot of effort into telling people about the roadworks, etc., that would take place, the need to actually provide people with information about how much disruption and the type of disruption that might cause, we transferred that across to an example of the Bromley Heath viaduct works, whereby an awful lot of effort was put in beforehand to put out the message about the amount of disruption that was likely to cause. And when the works actually took place, a lot less actual disruption took place to what we actually thought was going to happen. So just a couple of examples of ways we've actually already transferred that knowledge.
Good. Thank you, Richard. Don't know any other comments from any of our other friends now? I'll go around the table if we may, come to Marvin, then through Tim and Steve. Marvin, any thoughts?
It might be something for Steve to follow up on, actually. That piece about learning the lessons is absolutely essential, and it's not lessons to spin our wheels in the spot. It's about how does this create a platform for what we do with our bigger transport vision to go into the future. And Steve, I'm going to steal your comment from earlier, how this is step one, really. It's worth also noting some of the comments made by Dave earlier on about integrated ticketing and all that join up. How do we begin to build around this as the biggest investment we've made in transport in the last, in your lifetime, to as that platform, that foundation for delivering the transport infrastructure we need, that gives us the world class and that gives us that chapter change we're on offer. I'll just say something about us actually as politicians, as it were. And I think it could be something that the LEP and the business community and universities hold us accountable to, in that we are only going to have a mature conversation and a frank conversation, or be able to, if Metro Bus and those lessons are not weaponized for cheap headlines. So I think let's have those conversations in public about what went well, what didn't go as well as we would have wanted, why, what was in our control, what was not in our control, the nature of the relationship with DfT and central government and all those things. And then I'd say hold us accountable for making sure we have a mature conversation around that is for the benefit of the region, not just, a headline on breakfast radio or, a cheap, ill-informed headline in local papers.
I mean, thank you very much. Any thoughts just from Peter and the team before we move on round on that? I think it's really that case about how we take that learning forward and highlight all the benefits that this will bring to the region. Yeah. Okay. Now, Tim, any thoughts? And then Steve.
Yeah, I agree with Marvin. It's too easy, as to quote you, to weaponise when things go wrong. But I think we need to look at the positives. In that, now it seems to be, let's look at the negatives first, but we need to turn this around and look at the positives. This is a great big infrastructure project or road building project. I don't like the fancy words infrastructure. It's a big road for buses. And what's being done is very popular. And I saw it on BBC the other day. And you couldn't put a negative spin on it. People were there, they're getting on the bus, and it worked well. There will be issues, with building, because it's massive. And also, you may get one or two operating problems. But somebody has to have the gumption and the nerve to start these things. And it's very easy in opposition to start knock, 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 knock. Where actually you should really applaud the people that are doing it. And I'm, as the old one out here, the Bains aren't anything to do at the moment, will applaud my neighbouring authorities for actually having the gumption and the nerve to kick this off.
Tim, thank you very much. Steve, I know we've already seen a written comment from you on the screen, but we're very, very keen to hear your thoughts around the table as well.
Thank you, Chair. Well, look, the LEP and we all, I think, a few years ago, were moaning about the fact that we were all gridlocked and that we didn't have any real infrastructure that was going to work for us. And so the LEP started to challenge and started to say we need to do something about this to serve our communities better, not just the business community. We encouraged people to collaborate because it was clear that we couldn't do this on our own. It required unitary authorities, transport authorities, and public-private partnerships to work together to deliver something quite fantastic. We now need to champion this, which is another part of what the LEP is designed to do. When we get something started, let's get behind it and make it work. Because my background is healthcare. What I see we've done is to create the spine. We have a spine. Now the issue is, how do we build out from that? How do we ensure that it's connected to other infrastructure, whether it's rail or bus networks, so that people can get to it, can use it, and we can build out from it. So it is the starting point. But now we should believe that we can do it. The most important lesson here is that, yes, we have done something quite spectacular and we've learned a lot of lessons, but now we need to go on and move on and build out from it. And I know there is a commitment across all of the unitary authorities, public-private partnerships, to get on and continue the work. So we need to accelerate that now and make sure that we capitalise on the stuff that we've done. So I really do think now is the time for everybody to get behind this and for us to begin to feel confident about our futures and perhaps not read all the headlines that are trying to suggest that it's all going to hell in a handcart, because it's not. We are on the up and we need to start believing that we're doing something really special. Thank you.
Steve, thank you very much. And I think what's really come out across the committee this morning is, again, how positive we see this as for the future. So, Peter, on behalf of all of us, thank you very much. Your presentation, I think, really highlights the depth and the enormity of the work that's gone into that. So through Richard, Colin and Pete as well, thank you for that. James, really appreciate you coming along today, because clearly now you are one of those, that final piece of that jigsaw in making all of this happen. So appreciate all the support that you've put in, both personally and through First in that. Was there anything you'd just like to add before we close this item?
Thank you, Chair. I came to Bristol 3.5 years ago because of the Metrobus project. That's what beckoned me to be part of life here. And it's been quite a bumpy ride, hasn't it? Quite often I found myself as the one spokesperson free to say things positive about Metrobus. Many's the time I've been saying, keep the faith, folks. Metrobus is going to make a difference and it will work. And we've just seen a little glimpse of that this week. And for me, I think this is a fantastic accelerator, and I think we've come a very, very slow path, but it's going to start moving really quickly from here. And we can take advantage of all that's been done, not only with the routes that are currently being rolled out, but you can already see how we can take advantage of the infrastructure to improve other parts of the network, and also how simply improving and enhancing what people feel about Metrobus, about public transport, helps them to use and access the rest of the network. So yesterday I was in Bath with a group of people. They were really interested in Metrobus, even though what they saw it as is investment in improving public transport. And so they saw it as relevant to them, although it's not actually on their patch. So I'm very excited by this. And I think from our point of view as operators, we're just starting, and it really is. You know, we've seen the end of the process of beginning, and now we get going with bringing something very significant that will justify that huge figure, that £230 million worth of investment. But that's not going away. That's here to stay, and we're going to play our part in making that development in our public transport offer.
Great. James, thank you very much. And again, we see you very much as that very important part of that jigsaw for all the work that's gone ahead of you. So, Peter, thank you very much. Thank you to Richard, Colin and Pete for coming along well. James, please pass on the comments and thoughts from everybody here to the rest of the team. Thank you very much. As we always say at these points, you're very welcome to stay, but we appreciate if you feel it's appropriate that you are moving on. We'll move on if we may. So thank you very much again for that very interesting update. Our next item on the agenda is skills funding allocations. And this paper seeks our approval to allocate funding from within the Local Growth Fund towards skills capital projects and to allocate local enterprise partnership funding to careers advice activities. Very happy to move the recommendations on that. May I call for a seconder? Tim? Thank you, Tim. Members, anything you'd like to say to this item? Toby?
Chair, yes, thank you. I wanted to particularly focus my comments around South Gloucestershire and Stroud College, and particularly paragraphs 10 and 11 and recommendation 3. The SGS did make a bid as part of this process. They did have a low score in some critical areas of the assessment process. However, they did present a very compelling case in terms of sufficiency and demand. And that demand is only going to grow as some of the major development sites that we saw up on the screen that are on the Metrobus route, as they are fully built out, that demand for places is only going to get greater. So I particularly welcome recommendation 3, the review of the capital that we have. It's the right time to undertake that re-evaluation of schemes, and in order to ensure that we meet our most pressing priorities moving forward.
Smashing. Toby, thank you. Anything else members would like to bring to that? I'll go to Tim and then to Steve.
Yeah, thanks. This, just very quick, we use these words like skills and terms like the skills. This is very important. This is actually providing jobs for people and families, and jobs that are needed in the area. There are issues, I think, with some business that just cannot get the skilled people to actually do the jobs that are necessary, and then you have other people that don't have the skills. So I think this is really important. By putting the two together, it just makes a big difference to people's lives, which is, I believe, is what all of us in local government actually set out to do.
Thank you. Steve.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome this, and just remind colleagues of something that I said in my opening piece, which is that we do need to undertake a strategic review of 16 to 25, really, adult learning, because there are some massive investments that we need to make, and it will require us to join things up across unitary authorities in a way that I don't think we've been able to do. So clearly, the boundaries and the interfaces across unitary authorities, where you have two colleges almost next door to each other, have significant consequences if one does one thing and another does another thing. So the review is designed, I think, to help us try and understand what's the pipeline telling us. We know what's coming through our schools, but we don't necessarily have worked out that other piece, which is looking at, right, where did they go and how are we going to support them into employment ultimately, whether that's through apprenticeship routes or whether that's through universities or any other pathway. And that piece of work is critical. You see in the paper some very big numbers, and that is infrastructure that we need to find a way of supporting. So I welcome this. This is, again, is a fairly critical piece of work if we're to really deliver on the economic recovery. As Tim says, this is about getting people into jobs.
Steve, thank you very much. Appreciate your support. If there were no further comments, we'll now move to the voting, which again will be in line with our constitution. Recommendations 1 and 2 require a majority decision of the 4 local authorities and the combined authority mayor. So in reference to those 2 recommendations, may I ask those here who are eligible to indicate if they're in favour, please? I note for the record that that is unanimous, so we declare those 2 recommendations as carried. We note that recommendation 3 is for the committee to note. The minute will show that those are duly noted. And then finally, recommendation 4 is a majority decision of the 4 local authorities. So may I ask those that are representatives from the local authorities here on the committee today to indicate if they are in favour, please? I note for the record that everybody here is, so we declare that recommendation is carried as well. So thank you all very much indeed for your help on that. And again, really important steps for us in delivering both against the skills agenda, but as Tim and Steve and everybody has said, this is about driving forward jobs, making sure that we're providing those jobs and opportunities for everybody in our region to benefit from that economic growth. So thank you for that. Item 14 is the Programme Governance One Front Door. And our final report proposes amendments to governance arrangements and a set of delegations to ensure timely and effective monitoring of the investment funds and One Front Door schemes. This has already been discussed at our earlier West of England Combined Authority meeting, but again is brought to the committee who oversee the One Front Door programme. We have been through this previously, friends, but again, so I'm very happy to move the recommendations. May I look for a seconder on that one, please? Thank you, Toby. Members, were there anything in addition you'd like to add to any earlier comments? Across that. Steve.
Just one, Chair. On the diagram that we've got in Appendix 1, can we just check, in light of where the government review is going, that the statement next to let board key strategic decisions, that we just make sure that that is aligned to our terms of reference and is absolutely correct. It may not be as written here.
Thank you, Steve. I think it's an important point. As you said earlier in your reports, there is an awful lot of work going on centrally in central government with LEP, and that relationship between between local enterprise partnerships and combined authorities. So there's a lot of work there. But thank you for that. It's a very good point and duly noted. So if there are no other comments, we'll now move to the voting, which again is in line with our constitution. And the 2 recommendations require a majority decision of the 4 local authorities and the combined authority mayor. So in regards to those 2 recommendations, may I call for members to indicate if they're in favour? note for the record that we all are, and therefore we can declare that result as being carried. So thank you for that. I'm not aware of any other urgent items. So thank you all for your attendance here. Again, for the record, thank you to the Metrobus team for sharing the presentation. And again, Marvin, please thank everybody in Bristol City Council who's provided hospitality and helped us stage today's meetings. Nothing else for me to add other than that this committee will next meet on Friday the 27th of July, and to thank you all for your attendance. Declare the meeting closed. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.